Good morning. My name is Justin Joyce, and I will be providing the Digital Forensics Expert Testimony for Group 4, New Zealand, Haidama. The Digital Forensics Expert Testimony was created over the course of the 3 projects below. An overview for each project is: Project 1. During the Global Economic Summit, New Zealand was tasked with conducting a baseline analysis for establishing a secure communications network. During this time, anomalous network activity was found, resulting in attempted attribution. Cyber policy determination of New Zealand, the creation of cyber policy checklists, baseline scans were performed, and a review of legal policies between nations at the summit. Project 2. During this project, the attack continued and attack vectors and known attribution are researched. A vulnerability assessment matrix was completed and used in developing the cybersecurity risk assessment. The incident response was outlined and planned and executed, with sharing information by partner nations. A data exfiltration SLC was built and incorporated in producing the final forensic report that outlined the attacker's methods and tools. Project 3. During this phase, ransomware is found on multiple devices from each nation. The culprit is narrowed down and the ransomware is removed from all devices. Multiple SITREPs are created detailing each step of the computer security incident response plan, and the final deliverable was recommended next steps to ensure the security of the network. We will now begin to answer the expert testimony questions. Question 1. What are the legal challenges associated with cyber incidents involving foreign countries? The legal challenges will depend on which countries are involved and whether a data sharing agreement exists. Jurisdiction also plays a large role as to who exactly will be prosecuting the crime based on location of the crime versus nationality of the attacker. When dealing with separate nations, data sharing agreements could already be in place, and if not, a mutual legal assistance treaty request would need to be submitted to retrieve any data. Question number 2. How do internal laws affect e-discovery? Internal laws can easily affect e-discovery depending on the nation involved. When the United States, the Fourth Amendment ensures that a warrant is always needed for e-discovery. Specific state laws within the U.S. can also further restrict types of warrants and what information can be collected or used during prosecution. New Zealand is also required to receive an authorization to inspect any unlawful activity. Question 3. What are the legal challenges of assessing and retrieving electronic evidence stored on foreign soil? Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty Requests, or MLATs, must be submitted by law enforcement agencies to central government and can take months or even years to be processed. When talking about New Zealand, their Intelligence and Security Act of 2017, an authorization is needed only if the act is unlawful when responding to potential threats. Any information obtained by the Government Communications Security Bureau in carrying out information assurance and cybersecurity activities under Section 11 without an authorization may only be used for A. Performing its function under Section 11, which is protective security services advice and assistance, or B. Producing reports related to threat to or interference with communications or information infrastructures of importance to the government of New Zealand and providing those reports to any person or class of persons, whether in New Zealand or overseas, authorized by the Minister for the purpose of this subsections to receive them. Question 4. Assuming cloud storage was used, what procedures were followed to access and retrieve digital evidence stored in the cloud? If the two nations are part of the U.S. Cloud Act, law enforcement could quickly retrieve the data. Using the Cloud Act, law enforcement is authorized to access to certain information held by a different nation-based service provider to retrieve data created by citizens of the same nation as the law enforcement. If the countries are not part of the Cloud Act, mutual legal assistance treaties would need to be created and accepted. Question 5. Specific to the country that your team was assigned, how did the international laws and jurisdictions influence the processes and procedures followed during the forensic investigation? New Zealand's Privacy Act of 2020 and Intelligence and Security Act of 2017 were followed during all stages of the forensic investigation. All information retrieved from the New Zealand network was approved to be handed over to the United States authorities after the Minister of the Government Communications Security Bureau approved. ISO 27037:2012 was used as the international standard when identifying, collecting, acquiring, preserving, protecting, and analyzing digital evidence to share a common ground with other nations. Question 6. What conflicts arose between ethics and international laws during the forensic investigations? The Five Eyes nations all share a common Western culture perspective and understanding of technology. This shared perspective leads to similarities between the countries when reviewing the cyber policies of each government, with minor variations between them, usually based on how they are implemented or how each country groups the policies for implementation. Otherwise, the overall laws align closely. The only notable difference is the New Zealand Surveillance Act, which puts a restriction on law enforcement and states information gathered cannot be shared with intelligence agencies, but only with other law enforcement. Question 7. How did these conflicts affect the investigations? How were the conflicts mitigated, resolved? An avenue was provided to allow for sharing with intelligence agencies through specific types of warrants. These warrants require review and approval by a judge using guidelines laid out in the Surveillance Act, as well as the Intelligence Act, to approve the warrant, and thus the sharing of information on a person. Both nations release authority of information was contacted, and all data about the breaches not directly related to national security were released to other nations. Question 8. What steps were taken to protect United States soil and citizens during the international investigation? Describe any risks to the country, businesses, or citizens from your investigations. The U.S. NIST Special Publication 800-150 was used to provide high-level guidance on cyber threat indicators and sharing. Its guidance defines types of information and provides a general list of artifacts of an indicator that can be tracked and shared. The sharing of these indicators increased the overall security posture of the U.S. network to prevent subsequent attacks.